7 Flirting Tactics Women Love, a Stoic Guide. The art of genuine connection. Building relationships based on authenticity and respect. Have you ever wondered why some people naturally form deep, lasting connections while others struggle despite their best efforts? The answer isn't found in manipulation tactics or calculated moves. It lies in developing authentic communication skills that honor both yourself and others. Today, we're exploring evidence-based approaches to human connection that respect autonomy, build trust, and create genuine attraction. These aren't tricks to capture someone's attention. They're principles for becoming someone worth connecting with. As Will Rogers wisely observed, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Let's explore how to make those impressions reflect your authentic character while creating space for meaningful relationships to develop naturally. Principle 1. The power of genuine humor. Mark Twain noted that against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand. Humor is indeed powerful, not as a manipulation tool, but as a bridge that helps people feel comfortable and connected. Why does authentic humor work so well? Well, genuine humor demonstrates some really valuable qualities. First, there's emotional intelligence, which is all about understanding what brings joy without causing any discomfort. Then there's self-confidence, being secure enough in yourself to laugh at your own quirks. Social awareness is key too, as it involves reading situations appropriately. And let's not forget present-moment engagement. It's about noticing and responding to what's actually happening right in front of you. Now, let's talk about the crucial distinction here. There's a fundamental difference between humor that builds connection and tactics that, well, undermine others. Healthy humor includes things like observational comedy and self-deprecating jokes that don't cross into self-flagellation. It also involves situational wit that includes everyone and playful wordplay that creates shared delight. On the flip side, we have some problematic approaches. There's negging, which involves backhanded compliments designed to lower someone's self-esteem. Then there's teasing that targets insecurities and humor that positions you as superior. And of course, jokes that make others feel uncertain about your regard for them are best avoided. So, here's a critical reality check on what people call playful teasing. The dating advice industry, it really pushes this idea as an attraction tactic, saying it levels the playing field or shows you're not putting them on a pedestal. But honestly, this framing is quite problematic for a few reasons. First, it assumes there's an unequal dynamic from the very beginning. If you feel like you need to level the playing field, well, you're actually operating from insecurity, not confidence. Second, it totally confuses anxiety with attraction. Making someone feel uncertain about your feelings doesn't build healthy attraction, it just creates anxiety. And third, it's all based on these outdated models. Modern relationship research actually shows that positive reinforcement, not intermittent approval, is what builds secure attachment. So, what actually builds connection? Instead of trying to make someone feel unsure about whether you like them, try sharing genuine observations that make you both laugh. Be playful about situations, not about their worth or your interest level. Let your humor, reveal your personality rather than disguise your intentions. And really notice what makes them smile and remember it, because you care not because you're using it as some kind of strategy. Now, let's talk about the research reality. Studies on successful relationships consistently show that couples who truly thrive together express genuine appreciation frequently. They use humor to diffuse tension, not to create it. They make each other feel valued and secure, and they focus on building each other up rather than playfully tearing each other down. Principle 2 is all about authentic presence over strategic performance. The script, actually promotes mirroring as a deliberate technique to create connection. But let's take a moment to examine what's really going on here, and, what healthier alternatives might exist. The truth about mirroring is, yes, behavioral synchronization does occur naturally between people who genuinely feel connected. Researchers have in fact documented these tiny microsynchronizations in body language between friends and romantic partners. However, there's a pretty critical difference between two things here. First, there's natural synchronization. That's the unconscious behavioral matching that just emerges from genuine connection. Then there's strategic mimicry, which is when you deliberately copy someone else's behavior in order to, manipulate them into feeling connected. So, why is strategic mirroring actually problematic? First, it's performative rather than genuine. You're managing your behavior strategically instead of truly being present. Second, it treats the other person as a subject to manipulate. You're using psychological techniques on them without their knowledge or consent. Third, it really prevents authentic connection. You're so busy calculating your next move that you can't actually be present. And finally, it's just exhausting. Trying to maintain conscious control over behaviors that should be unconscious is honestly mentally draining. So, what actually creates connection? Well, real presence involves a few key things. First, it's about putting away distractions. Phone away, mind engaged with the actual person in front of you. Then there's active listening, which means hearing not just the words, but the meaning and emotion behind them. It's also about natural responsiveness, allowing your genuine reactions rather than calculating strategic ones. Comfortable eye contact matters too. Looking at someone because you're interested, not because you're deploying a tactic. And finally, relaxed body language, positioning yourself in ways that feel natural rather than strategic. Here's the irony. When you're genuinely interested in someone and fully present in conversation, your body language naturally becomes more engaged. You lean in without even thinking about it. You make eye contact because you really want to see their expression. You nod because you're genuinely following what they're saying. So the technique of mirroring is actually just a mechanical attempt to recreate what happens naturally when genuine interest exists. Honestly, it's better to skip the performance and cultivate genuine interest instead. Principle 3. Mutual respect over power games. Now, the script promotes reversing the rules and creating a playful challenge to make someone feel like they need to earn your attention. But honestly, this reflects a fundamentally unhealthy approach to relationships. So, here's the thing about this advice. It treats relationships as if they're competitions, where one person must win and the other is left to chase. It suggests that uncertainty and anxiety are actually tools to create attraction, rather than obstacles. And, Apparently being straightforward about your interest is seen as a tactical error, almost like it's a mistake, to be honest. Ultimately, the goal becomes control, not connection, which, well, really misses the point of a healthy relationship. The reason this approach fails in the long run is pretty clear. First, it attracts insecure attachment. People with secure attachment styles are usually turned off by all this game playing. Second, it creates unhealthy foundations. Relationships that are built on manufactured uncertainty tend to struggle when real intimacy demands actual vulnerability. Third, it's just exhausting. Trying to keep strategic control over every interaction means you never really get to relax and be yourself. And finally, it selects for the wrong traits, because people who respond positively to these games often have their own attachment issues, which honestly isn't what most people are hoping for. Now, let's talk about what the research actually shows. Studies on attraction and relationship formation consistently find that reciprocal interest builds attraction. Knowing someone likes you genuinely makes them more attractive, not less. Consistency creates security. Reliable behavior builds trust, and that's absolutely essential for real intimacy. Authenticity is attractive too. Being genuine about who you are and what you want is far more appealing in the long run than any kind of strategic performance. And, emotional availability really matters. The ability to be present and genuine predicts relationship satisfaction much better than any supposed mystery or challenge. Now, about the dopamine myth. The script claims that creating emotional uncertainty triggers dopamine, which supposedly makes this approach effective. Well, that's technically true, but it's also deeply misleading. Yes, uncertainty does trigger dopamine, but so does gambling, drug use, and compulsively checking social media. The fact that something triggers a neurochemical response doesn't mean it's healthy, or that it's a good foundation for relationships. So it's important to keep that in mind. So, what does dopamine actually signal? Well, it tells us to pay attention, because this is important, uncertain, or potentially rewarding. Now, let's talk about what secure attachment really requires. It's all about oxytocin and other bonding chemicals that come from trust and reliability. A healthy alternative approach involves a few key elements. First, be genuinely interested when you're interested. There's no need to hide your feelings just to seem mysterious. Also, maintain your own life, not as some strategy, but simply because it's genuinely healthy. Express appreciation authentically. When you notice something you like, say so. Allow natural relationship progression. Some relationships develop quickly, others slowly. Both can be healthy. And treat the other person as an equal from the start. There's no leveling needed because you see them as a peer, not a prize. Moving on to Principle 4. Honest communication over calculated manipulation. There's this idea out there about using eye contact as a secret weapon to create mystery and make someone wonder about your interest. But this approach fundamentally misunderstands healthy human connection. So, what's the real function of eye contact? Well, it matters in human communication because it signals attention and presence. It facilitates emotional attunement, builds trust through openness, and helps both people feel seen and acknowledged. So, what's wrong with strategic eye contact? The advice that tells you to hold the gaze for a few beats, anchor it with a smile, then calmly look away to create some kind of mystery. Well, it treats human interaction as if it's performance art. This approach really reduces authentic connection to calculated moves. Instead of actually connecting, you're just thinking about timing and strategy. It also creates artificial dynamics because the so-called mystery is manufactured, not natural. And honestly, it assumes that manipulation is necessary, as if authentic interest just isn't enough to attract someone. The focus ends up being on control, managing someone's perception instead of genuine mutual understanding. So, what does healthy eye contact actually look like? Well, it's natural and comfortable. You make eye contact simply because you're engaged, and then you look away naturally as the conversation flows. It's also culturally appropriate. Eye contact norms can vary a lot, so it's important to respect these differences. It's responsive to the other person too. You notice if they're comfortable or if sustained eye contact is making them uneasy. And really, it's just part of your overall presence. It flows naturally from being genuinely interested in the conversation. The better approach? Instead of, calculating the optimal eye contact timing just to spark curiosity, focus on being genuinely present. When someone shares something meaningful, give them your full attention. And when you look at them, let it be because you're actually interested in what they're expressing, not because you're executing some kind of tactic. Principle 5 is all about why the so-called push-pull creates unhealthy dynamics. The script actually promotes push-pull as this classic strategy, where you alternate between showing interest and then withdrawing it just to create emotional uncertainty. Honestly, this is one of the most problematic tactics in the whole pick-up artist methodology. So, what does push-pull actually do? Well, this technique is designed to deliberately create anxiety about the relationship status. It makes someone feel uncertain about your feelings, and it even triggers attachment anxiety responses. At its core, it uses emotional manipulation to create investment. Why is this so harmful? First, it actually mimics abusive relationship patterns. Intermittent reinforcement, where reward and withdrawal are unpredictable, is a hallmark of abusive dynamics. Second, it creates trauma bonding, because that cycle of anxiety and relief forms a powerful but unhealthy attachment. Third, it tends to attract people with anxious attachment, since securely attached, folks usually find this behavior really off-putting. And finally, it prevents genuine intimacy, because honestly, you just can't build real trust while you're deliberately creating uncertainty. So, yes, it's true that emotional variability does trigger dopamine. But, the context here really matters a lot. There's healthy dopamine triggering, like when you surprise your partner with a gift, go on a spontaneous adventure together, or, discover a new shared interest. And then there's unhealthy dopamine triggering, like deliberately making someone unsure whether you actually like them, giving approval or disapproval at random, or even creating emotional crises on purpose. The first approach, it builds joy and excitement, but the second, honestly, just creates anxiety and insecurity. Decades of research on adult attachment show us some pretty clear patterns. Secure attachment, for example, comes from consistent and reliable emotional availability. But anxious attachment, on the other hand, develops when affection is unpredictable and inconsistent. And, successful long-term relationships, they're defined by reliability, not by manufacturing uncertainty. So, here's the real alternative. If you're interested in someone, just be consistently interested. Show genuine enthusiasm, and don't rely on strategic withdrawal to create intrigue. It's important to maintain appropriate boundaries. Having your own life, honestly, isn't a form of push. It's just healthy autonomy. Express your feelings authentically, share your appreciation when you genuinely feel it. And above all, focus on building security, not anxiety. Create a foundation where both people feel safe enough to be vulnerable. Let's talk about natural endings versus manufactured scarcity. Some advice out there says you should end conversations at their high points to leave the other person wanting more, kind of like a TV show's cliffhanger. But honestly, this treats human interaction as transactional, and it really undermines genuine connection. The problem with strategic exits is pretty clear. This approach treats the other person as an audience, someone whose impressions you have to manage, instead of someone you actually want to connect with. It prioritizes your image over authentic interaction, so you're always calculating the effect rather than just being present. And, it creates artificial scarcity, manufacturing mystery, instead of letting natural interest develop. The focus shifts to control, with the goal being to manage their perception, not to enjoy each other's company. So, what actually happens when you're always calculating the optimal moment to exit a conversation? Well, you're not fully present during the interaction. You end up missing out on opportunities for deeper connection. Plus, you kind of signal that you're playing games rather than being genuine. And honestly, you tend to attract people who respond to that kind of game playing, often folks with their own issues. Conversations, they naturally have their own rhythms, don't they? Sometimes they come to a natural end because, both people need to be somewhere else. Other times they wind down gradually as the topics get exhausted. Then there are those lovely instances when they just continue, because both people are genuinely enjoying the exchange. But of course, sometimes they get cut short by external circumstances. Now, when it comes to healthy practice, it's important to end conversations when there's a genuine reason to leave. You could be honest and say something like, "I've really enjoyed talking with you, but I need to head out. And if you want to continue later, just say so directly. I'd like to continue this conversation. Could we exchange numbers?" Trust that genuine interest doesn't require any manufactured scarcity. Here's the reality. If someone enjoys talking with you, they'll want to talk again. Not because you manipulated the timing, but because they genuinely enjoyed your company. If they don't want to talk again, manufacturing mystery won't change that. So, here's what the dating advice industry systematically misses. Authenticity is actually more effective than performance for building satisfying relationships. Why does authenticity win? Well, let's break it down. Sustainability, because you can maintain your genuine self indefinitely while keeping up a persona, becomes, honestly, exhausting. Selectivity. Being authentic helps you connect with people who actually like you, not just those who respond to manipulation tactics. Then there's satisfaction. Relationships where you can be yourself are simply more fulfilling than those where you have to keep up a performance. Ethics, treating people with respect, really does align with most people's values. Mental health, not constantly calculating your next strategic move is just less stressful. And real intimacy, genuine connection, requires dropping the mask eventually. The fundamental choice, then, is this. You can either spend your energy trying to manipulate people into relationships through strategic behavior, or you can invest that energy in becoming someone capable of genuine connection. The first approach, sure, it might generate short-term success, if you measure success by closing or winning. But the second approach, it builds something much more valuable, the capacity for relationships that are actually satisfying, sustainable, and psychologically healthy. So, what does this actually look like? Well, be interested when you're interested, share your enthusiasm genuinely. Develop yourself, build skills, pursue interests, cultivate character. Treat people as autonomous individuals. Respect their right to choose based on accurate information about who you are. Express your feelings authentically. Say what you mean without strategic withholding. Accept that not everyone will be interested. That's not a failure. It's just how healthy selection works. And finally, build connections with people who appreciate your genuine self, because those are the relationships truly worth having. Final thoughts. Character over tactics. The fundamental question isn't what tactics will attract someone. It's what kind of person do I want to be, and what kind of relationships do I want to build. There are two paradigms here. The manipulation framework. Relationships as games with winners and losers, people as targets to conquer. Success measured by closing or winning, and connection as something you extract through strategic moves. Then there's the authentic connection framework. Relationships as mutual choices between autonomous individuals. People as complex humans worthy of respect, success measured by mutual satisfaction and genuine care, and connection as something that develops naturally between compatible people. The long-term reality is this. The manipulation framework might generate short-term results, but it attracts people with insecure attachment styles, creates relationships built on false pretenses, requires exhausting ongoing performance, prevents genuine intimacy, and honestly damages your own character over time. The authentic connection framework, on the other hand, attracts people seeking genuine relationships, creates foundations for real intimacy, allows you to relax and be yourself, builds sustainable satisfaction, and develops your character in a positive way. Your choice. Every interaction is an opportunity to choose. Will you treat this person as a human being worthy of honesty and respect, or as a target for your strategic maneuvers? The quality of your relationships, and ultimately your character, depends on these cumulative choices. Remember, the most attractive quality you can develop isn't the ability to deploy manipulation tactics skillfully. It's the capacity to show up as your genuine self, treat others with respect, and build connections based on mutual appreciation and authentic interest. That's what creates relationships worth having.